Hi, my name is Bill Buchanan, and I lead a podcast series on the world leaders in cryptography. And today I have a true world leader with me, Joos Vandewalle. Hi.
Hi.
So Joos is a Professor Emeritus with the Department for Electrical Engineering at the Catholic University of Leuven, Belgium. He's one of the most impactful researchers in computer science in the world, including in areas of cryptography, secure data communications, data mining, and complex systems. His work has led to many areas of impact, including supervising the creators of the Advanced Encryption Standard that we would know as AES. He has also worked to simplify the computational complexity of support vector machine SVM, as we would now know it, and which involved using a least squares approach for learning-based classifiers. He also advanced the theory behind single-value decomposition by extending it to multilinear dimensions, and which addresses complex data mining challenges. Joos is a IEEE Life Fellow and served as the president of the Royal Flemish Academy of Belgium, KVAB, and co-wrote a book outlining the invisible power of mathematics, actually, which I have here with me, and it's a book that I highly recommend. So what's your current role and what does a typical day involve for you?
Thank you, Bill. As you have told, I'm emeritus, retired professor, but still I have quite busy days and I have a lot of activities to do. And nowadays they have volunteer jobs still for our Belgian Academy, and I can talk about it later. But uh, these activities are related to the responsible research and innovation and science ethics, where I'm leading a reflection group for this academy. And we have activities for on this topic, like how far can scientists go in their engagement towards the society without losing their credibility. If they go far into activism, they might lose some of the trust that the public has. And so we reflect on it with many different disciplines, but that's quite far away from this here. You describe me as a world leader in cryptography. I try to be a little bit more cautious with that. I consider myself to be instrumental in setting up and also gearing this group of cryptography at KVAB University and into its excellence that it has now. And my main feeling is that I have been able to play an important role in supervising uh, PhD students, about 44 over my career. And I consider myself to be one element, one step in a whole chain of descendants. And actually, I had the opportunity to have had a supervisor who was a fantastic applied maths professor, Professor De Wilde, and he made his PhD in Stanford, and so he brought me into a chain that brings me to people like Gauss, Kalman, Ragazzini, Poisson, Fourier, and so on. So, and my PhD students have now also their PhD students, and there's already 432 that have become members of the whole tree of descendants. And so I'm proud of that. And I think to be able to guide these guys into uh, important contributions on applied mathematics for society is really making me very happy. So I feel I live as a happy man now. What I do in outside, we can say a little bit about that. In the summer, I spent always a couple of weeks in my garden doing some sculpturing on natural stones. And mathematics is one of the driving forces there also. I must say, one of the driving forces and one of the elements I try to avoid in the sculptures is having linearity. And also in cryptography, linearity is something to be avoided. But also to have a nice sculpture, I think you need shapes that are strong and solid. So there's some good links with the research. Anyway,
Yeah.
I should not
I've
say.
seen I've seen your sculptures and they look a little bit like elliptic curves, and obviously elliptic
Yes, so
curves are
sure.
really the basis of most of our security on the internet and also for trust. When it comes to leadership, you're completely correct. I mean, an academic leader isn't someone who leads a company and defines all the corporate strategy. An academic leader is someone who mentors and allows things to happen, enables things, will spot talent and will enable talent. I always think you can never create talent, you enable it. And I think as a great teacher and as a professor, you're enabling that talent to happen. You're
Yes.
nurturing it, even through the difficult times overall. But it's
And
the ability to attract great people is really something that is one of the best things about being a professor and an academic leader. And I'm interested about Belgium. I mean, what is it about Belgium, especially that it punches above its weight in science and technology?
I think, from my viewpoint, I feel that there's a lot to having a good education, a high school education of mathematics and also sciences, but also at university, good university education. We do not have the competitive attitude at the university so much. The students work together; they do not compete against each other, uh, and the transition from high school to university for engineering is typically happening with an entrance examination that is mainly on mathematics. That we inherited from the French schools, where they also have entrance examinations for the military as well as for the civil engineering. And this is an important element to select the students on the basis of mathematics for engineering. And this brings good quality students and who have real interest in mathematics. And I always observe that out of this 500, I was teaching linear algebra to these students for more than 20 years. And when first course, first day of the when they come, and I try to explain to them, linear algebra is important. You're going to do something with that in your career. It's not just there for your brain, but it's for doing something with it and bringing value to society. And real engineering needs this type of mathematics. And I give them examples of that. Cryptography was one of the examples I give. I also mentioned already immediately that digitalization would need more discrete mathematics. So it's kind of bringing this up to the attention because I feel the teachers in high school, the mathematics teachers, are not trained for doing that. And so we can, based on that, we can attract good students. And many of the good students that we will mention today really were interested in the mathematics I was teaching in the first year. So I could somehow grab some of the good students already in the early phases.
Yeah, and I live in a world of prime numbers. So everything I do, even when I do polynomials now, so I've moved from RSA into elliptic curve, and now I have the wonderful world of polynomials to actually deal with because lattice-based cryptography is all about these operations on polynomials. And then the magical little mod P is still in there, or we have a division by x to the power of n plus 1, which is equivalent to that prime number. And I think when students see that wonderful equation of Diffie-Hellman and RSA, they really see the beauty that's behind a lot of the cryptography that underpins our world. So what were your days like at school before your university days? What kind of subjects did you enjoy
I
as
I was living in West Flanders, which is closer to the seaside. So it's about 120 kilometers to Leuven for the university. And I was a good student and very good in mathematics. And so at the end of high school, I hesitated between doing pure mathematics or engineering. But I thought my father was a blacksmith, so in that sense, and the more in the artist and or the skills of doing this type of machines and things like that. So I still wanted to have some application of the mathematics, and so in that sense, I did the entrance examination. I was very successful, and so I rolled into the program of at the University for Engineering. And in there, I was always choosing the more mathematical subjects and the disciplines that are less on memorizing. I hate memorizing somehow. I think this is something where machines can do better than human beings, and reality is that it is now surpassing human memorization. But as far as thinking is concerned, I think human beings are still quite ahead, and we should keep it that way. So, in that sense, I had a good career for engineering and more electrical and more applied mathematics. And then I did my PhD. I was fortunate, as I told, to have a very good PhD supervisor who brought me into the contact of the international world on applied mathematics and systems and control and algorithms. And this has moved me automatically to go into a postdoc at Berkeley with Leon Chua, who is very famous for nonlinear systems and circuits and chaos. And I worked there for 3 years, and yes, this was a very nice time. You're being exposed to this international environment, and I brought back very good, not only memories but deep insights on how research is being done in a very open and innovative and creative way. And I hope I have been able to transfer that also to my PhD students.
yeah, I was an electrical engineer a long time ago. So my a little question is whether you use I or J for complex numbers. It usually tells if you're more of a mathematician than an electrical engineer. I or J, which one would you use
I or J?
for a complex number?
Oh,
Three plus I
yes,
four.
yes, yes, yes. I
What's the
understand.
notation as an electrical
I'm
engineer?
flexible, so I think sometimes I use I and sometimes I use J. When I think about electrical circuits and impedances, I use the J as it is customary there, and but I'm equally happy with the I. Actually,
Yeah.
I introduced a course on discrete mathematics and in the first 2 years, and some students were really hated it, but some students really loved it. So it's a kind of a digital uh, feeling on it, and nowadays it's still available, this course, but it is restricted not to the entire community of all 550 engineers, because we start engineering with altogether all disciplines, as well civil as material science, and maybe discrete mathematics for civil engineers is not the most appropriate thing. Maybe for electrical, it's definitely important, and computer science equally well. And so it's better. I was vice dean for trying to reorganize this whole thing, and I'm very happy that we also started with a new master in mathematical engineering, because we felt that after 3 years of bachelor, gradually in our old system, there was less and less mathematics, and quite a long, quite a lot of students really wanted to have more mathematics also in the last 2 years, because there's a lot to learn. Cryptography is one of these, but also data science and also a kind of mathematical modeling of systems and control. It's mathematics plays a more important role nowadays than it used to be, I feel. And
Yeah. And so many Europeans will go to these elite universities and be immersed in the environment and stay there. Why did you come back to Europe to for your academic career?
That's a good question. Actually, there was one point, 1 year after we returned to Belgium, I was not that happy with the position I could get at my university, and I hesitated. And I did even some applications in American universities. But finally, maybe I got some better offer that maybe helped to stay here. Actually, one of the reasons for doing this, to staying in Belgium, that I never regretted is, I think, education of children in Belgium. I prefer that over education in the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean,
so I did not regret. Our three children have all been studying at university, good topics, and so it's one of these is also more in image processing, and so
yeah. Some would say that the US led in public key cryptography and Europe possibly led with symmetric key and hashing methods. But we can come back on to
yeah,
that kind of thing. I don't think the differentiation is actually there. But I mean a lot of the work in public key cryptography was done at Stanford and MIT
yes,
and so on, and a lot of the great work in a symmetric key has been done in your university and
yes.
within Belgium. So it's really great to see that differentiation. So the Computer Security and Industrial Cryptography Research Group, COSIC, is a world leading in its impact within areas of digital trust and cryptography. So I'm really interested in maybe telling the story if you can, because there might be an early career researcher somewhere who's going to build a lab and they go, I can't compete against these big labs around the world. They have so much resources and research grants and people and things like that. And sometimes the opportunity is there to build an amazing research infrastructure, and it's probably all around the team that you build, taking opportunities as they come along. So, if you're okay, I'd like to go through the decades because I remember these decades very well, the 1980s and the 1990s and the excitement and so on. And I think the history of the lab goes back to 1979, which was an amazing time in cryptography. It was just after the creation in 1976, around then,
76, yes.
of the Diffie-Hellman method. And then the year after, 1977, I think, we had the first sign of public key cryptography of the RSA method. We obviously had the Lucifer cipher being created more for a commercial outcome. We had IBM really pushing forward DES
Hmm.
and so on. There was a lot of tension around the crypto wars and things like that. And it must have been such an exciting time. So could you just outline the foundation that was created
Mhm.
in the group around the 1980s? If you could just stick to the 1980s, that would be great. And we'll step through each of the decades.
Okay, very good. Actually, I returned from Berkeley in 1979, and at that time, one master student was finishing his master's program with Professor Govaerts, a colleague at our university, more senior colleague, and he had uh, been teaching a course with public key and DES already in the program for the telecommunication students. So this student was Ivo de Smet, very well known. He's a professor at Austin and also UCL, and he came to us and he came to Professor Govaerts and he wanted to do a PhD on cryptography. But Professor Govaerts felt that there's a lot of mathematics involved, and then he saw this younger person in the department. This was me, and he uh, tried to motivate me into cryptography. I was a bit surprised, I must say, and but I talked to Ivo de Smet, and I saw that his drive was really enormous, and somehow, since this is in the realm of applied mathematics, I said, let's do it. And so we started working together on different things. The studying some of the equivalences of the DES algorithm so that you could massage it to get it into better shape for applications or for understanding the algorithm better. Another one was on the knapsack problem, which was a very attractive public key algorithm, which was broken finally by Shamir. But we were really working hard on, and we found some weaknesses. But Shamir could really make the real breakthrough. But so in that sense, Knapsack was our first attempt to do something. We got some publication in IEEE information theory on that. So it's with Ivo de Smet, and Ivo was also working very hard on it. During that period of the 80s, we really insisted to work in, and with Ivo de Smet, open cryptography where the algorithms are public and subject to public scrutiny, and only the key is the only secret element. So we definitely believed in this argument. And we proposed some projects with Ivo de Smet, and we did some consultancy for Swift and other companies. But for our public work, for the academic work, we really had open attitude, and our research proposal in that period was blocked by the security agencies of our neighboring countries, the Netherlands, Germany, and France. So in that sense, we had a very good project that was accepted by European Commission, but we were stopped from doing it because they considered this to be topic of open research to be the cryptography research should be done by the national security agencies. We felt already uncomfortable about that because we thought society will need more open methods. We already use, of course, computers, and we could understand our digital technology would develop with the chips. We had the start of IMEC in our neighborhood because our department was cut into two pieces. Half of it went to an IMEC and the other half could stay in electrical engineering. IMEC is now the leading center for microelectronics and chip technology, and we have good contacts with them. But it showed that we needed more digital technology, and so it was a nice period, and we felt strong about the basic principle of Kerckhoff principle for cryptography. So this was making it a bit difficult, and nevertheless we continued with that, and we did some work on implementing a dash chip using some of the equivalences that we could. One of uh, the persons who was very instrumental is Ingrid Verbouwede. She's now in our COSIC group, and she's working on hardware for cryptography. So along her career, she also did the same, followed the same line. And this was really instrumental for us also to bring this chip design into a company. And there was a startup company, Cryptech, which unfortunately went bankrupt a few years later. This was unfortunate. It was more for internal reasons that it did not succeed, but we regretted it very much. But anyway, this is things that I never did a startup later on, but anyway, I consider this to be a good attempt, but Nowadays, Ingrid is also involved in startup activities because I think cryptography is a very fruitful area for startups, and I think in Europe we should be encouraging this very much. So
Yeah.
that's the 80s. Yes, so we had uh, the chips I mentioned already. We organized I attended the first Eurocrypt conference
Oh,
held in Udine in 1983. Only 49 participants, and Ivo Smet and I was
1983.
there. So we were there quite early, and also in '83 we already had an international course on industrial cryptography, and with 100 participants. So we
Oh,
started already exposing our understanding of this to an international community. So consulting, I mentioned already. We also had David Schaum in the period of 81 to 89 visiting us. So he, of course, was talking very much about digital currency, the predecessor of the Bitcoin and things like that. So, yes, we had, uh, unfortunately, and that I should mention, in 1986, Yves de Smet left us after his PhD for a postdoc in Montreal. This was a bit of a surprise for us, and we regretted it very much. And together with the start of Cryptech, most of the students that have been trained in cryptography moved into this company. So somehow the academic work at the department was really, yes, a bit in a difficult position. But fortunately, there was a person called Bart Preneel, very well known, of course, and is also on your uh, scheme. He obtained a master degree in '87 with a project on digital communication. Afterwards, he came to me with a plan for a PhD on biomedical signal processing. And yes, I was a bit surprised, but I tried to convince him to choose instead cryptography. And Bart even has mentioned that in the remembrance book for my retirement, that he came in with the idea of biomedical signal processing. He went out of my office with the idea to work on cryptography. So it was, I had to convince him, and I never regretted this. And I also think that Bart never regretted this. But if it didn't happen that way, COSIC might have been very different because we were really needing a person with this type of capacity. What else happened in the 80s? I was attending a very selective workshop in Monte Verita, the mountain of truth in the south um, of Switzerland. This was organized by Jim Massey with attendance restricted to 50. And this was a very famous mountain, and it was even in the early 1900s a place where people like Lenin, Sigmund Freud, and Carl Jung were coming. So it's a center for utopians, pacifists, and alternative lifestyles. But we had a regular lifestyle there. So, okay.
yeah.
In the
And
80s,
so that,
yes.
yeah, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Um, so Ivo de Smet finished his PhD in '84, and '86 he left us. And we organized the first, we had organized Eurocrypt twice. The first one was in '89 in Hout-Halen, Belgium, with 295. By that
Oh,
time, our interaction with our sister university, Jean-Jacques Iscater, was very good, and we organized it together, the Flemish as well as the French-speaking universities, who both had good groups on cryptography. A very nice conference, and we had for the first time a rump session in this Eurocrypt conference. I still remember that these conferences were very important because they were more important for the active research than the journals, which in other topics are dominant, the journals, but here the conferences are so important because many algorithms get broken or some weaknesses get easily detected already at the conference or soon after that. So in that sense, the scientific mechanism works better with conferences than with journals. And moreover, we were always impressed that the design of an algorithm makes you in a biased position towards the the strength of the algorithm. You think your algorithm is stronger than it really is, whereas the attackers look at it with a different mindset and with a mindset of finding all kinds of methods to break it. And in that sense, they have not this biased attitude, they have more the biased attitude towards let me show that it's not strong. And that's the basic reason for that is of course that cryptographic algorithms cannot be proven to be safe except for the Vernam, but that's not practical anyway. So conference is very important. We enjoyed it very much and we engaged in it several times. And then I come, I think, to the 90s already.
Oh, no, no, we'll go into the 90s. And I think just to recap what you just said there, so it was the Hellman-Merkel method for knapsack that was the method that was broken. I think that was Ralph Merkel and Marty Hellman. And I think it was actually broken at one of the US Eurocrypts Live by Audie Shamir and Len Edelman.
Yeah,
And that was a contender for public key cryptography.
very much.
RSA was
It
less
was more
stable.
attractive than RSA as far as usefulness is concerned, but the knapsack, yeah.
Yeah. And there are existing methods that use the knapsack method that are still secure. So it was only just the way that it had actually been set up then. And then when you talked about DES, so DES was a 64-bit block size, as I remember, not the 128. We'll talk about AES in a little minute, but it was 64. Some have criticized the small block size overall. But as I remember, it's the Lucifer type cipher where you split the data into two 32-bit blocks, and then you
Mhm.
put them through these equivalent ciphering blocks, and then you swap them over. It's a beautiful little schematic that it actually has, and then you apply a bit of the key uh, in each of
Each
the
round, yes.
rounds
Mhm.
that you have, and obviously that then influenced the work that would happen later on. And DES was only 56-bit keys, and we all know the history of the problem of 56-bit keys, and that 56-bit keys were breakable. 64-bit probably wouldn't have been breakable, but because of the 8 checksum bits that were used in the key, which were pretty useless overall,
A
we
waste
ended
of
up
bits, yeah.
with 56. And I know that Marty Hellman was obviously one that was raining against this. And the reason for this was that the US law enforcement and Homeland Defense agencies could possibly crack that 56 bit. So they were quite happy with that. And there was many that were saying that this isn't right overall. But DES is still a good algorithm. 3DES is still pretty good, although it's only 112-bit security, which is still fine. And my credit card is probably still using DES. The finance industry just love DES. They just won't get rid of it. And then I
Mm.
love this EDE method where you do the encryption, decryption, encryption with two parts of the key because it kept compatibility with DES. So DES was really a beautiful method. And then we had 3DES, and it's still probably fairly widely used. I think it was last year at the end of last year that NIST defined that it wasn't going to be a standard anymore and that it needs to be dropped. But I'm sure there are still a lot in them. And then so the 1990s came along, and you're obviously starting to grow your foundation of research. Could you tell us a bit about the 1990s?
Well, the people that were around in that time, Ingrid Verbouwheden with a PhD on VLSI design and for crypts and for cryptography. And uh, in 94, she moved to Berkeley also, and she stayed in the US for quite a while until she retired or returned to Belgium. But Bart Preneel finished his PhD in 93. He also went to Berkeley for a year and then he came back. And somehow I must say this has made a real difference because from that time on, Bart had quite impact on what is going on in our department. The group COSIC was already during that period was already coined at that point because computer security and industrial cryptography, we consider this to be the key marks of what we wanted to do. The industrial cryptography, meaning more public cryptography and the use and by the worldwide use is a very important element for good communication and also, we also promoted end-to-end encryption type for wherever we had to do activities and deliver consultancy. Whereas, of course, because other methods that line encryption really have clear text available, and you should avoid that. So it's yes. We had a yearly course on cryptography still going on and with attracting good people as far as the speaker side is concerned, our own people and external people, but also attracting participants both from industry and scientific or academic locations. Also, we regret it very much, and I used the, the document on the Clipper chip was launched by the United States. We opposed to it very much and felt that Europe should not obey to the United States with this type of offer for, fortunately, because it was stopped a few years later because it was not so successful. But on the other hand, having a system where one country can really decipher all the data that are around worldwide is not a system that is democratically acceptable. So the poster "Sink the Clipper Chip" was really used very much, and also to our students. And yes, so that's in the. Of course, the chip was already designed for it and the VLSI, but it was stopped. So in that sense, we were happy with that. What else? I think Johan Damen was also one of our PhD students in the early 90s. He made his PhD in 95. He was working on cipher and hash function design, strategies based on linear and differential cryptanalysis. And he was working independently of Vincent Rijmen. Vincent Rijmen finished his PhD on iterated block ciphers in 97. So they were both around in our department around in the same time without working together during their
Yeah.
PhD work. But after the PhD work of both of them, they were still postdoc. Vincent was staying for a longer period as a postdoc. Johan moved to companies, Janssen Pharmaceutica and Proton, but they still had kept contact for designing cryptographic methods, block ciphers, and so they started working on some of the predecessors of Rijndahl, but in 97 they really designed the Rijndahl, and a few years later they submitted it to the NIST competition. So that's a trajectory where I do not feel that I personally am the creator, but I hope I was instrumental in making this cooperation possible. And I always felt very happy that they brought together slightly different methods from cryptography into their design of AES. And if you compare it with the IBM, who have brought all the coppersmiths and all their experts, and they all could bring an extra layer in a quite complicated algorithm. Compared to that, our two guys, they brought something together in a very efficient way and a very nice way. And so it's, I think, a nice creative way, which I consider more the result of good education and good environment that brought this together. And I see this still happening nowadays in our cryptography groups. It's not just a one-time accident. It is something which is repeating each other in new circumstances, of course.
Yeah, because you had IBM. I forget the name of the cipher that they had, was competing in that 2001 competition for NIST. You also had Bruce Schneier, Bruce Schneier's
Yes,
extension of his ciphers, and then you had Revest
yes.
bringing forward the
That's
RC.
strong competition, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, unbelievable when you think about the resources and the history. This was just like a little kid on the block competing against big giants. And
Yes.
I think it possibly what happened is that, say, IBM, I hate to say it, but they would maybe just crib something that they had in the past and then just say, we'll have a bit more Lucifer, Cypher, and the same with maybe with Bruce and so on. It was just a tweak. And they said, oh, we have a good chance here against the Raindal. So Raindal is made up from the two names.
Yes,
Uh,
indeed. Very
that's where
Flemish
that
names, and
very Flemish. Yeah.
but very hard to pronounce for US and UK people
Yeah, that's right.
using English.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
done on purpose, apparently, to make.
Because it was that the ciphers at the time were named after the people, like the RC
Yes,
ciphers of it was named after Ron Rivest and so on.
yes.
You've obviously got RSA and Diffie Hellman, and so I think that's the thing I like about cryptography is that they remember the original papers. I think that's good. When they say Groth 16, it's Jens Groth in 2016 that created this method that's now used in all these places. So we
Mm.
remember people because we name the methods after those people rather than coming up with some corporate name and so on. And they obviously created something that was efficient, even from an IoT point of view in terms of energy and things like that. They brought something that was efficient and was completely over-engineered for security. I mean, the security was like space science security level. So there was never any problem because that was the balance that you had. You either ramped up the number of rounds for the
Mm.
security or you reduced the security and improved the performance. I think they ended up with 10, 12, and 14. Is that right for the number of rounds of AES? 128-bit has 10 rounds. Obviously, the more rounds that you actually do, the longer it will take. So for
Yes.
256-bit, you've got 14 rounds because of the way that the key is getting split. But they introduced the S-box approach. Were you doing work in the group around S-boxes? Where did the S-box approach come in?
I do not remember very well. The S boxes were always triggering, of course, some yes, some caution and some attention, and yes.
Yeah. And then I think it uses the scrambling circuits of you get a 4 by 4
Mhm.
matrix
Matrix.
of bytes, which you then can swap the columns and then the rows, and then
Mhm.
you obviously have this finite field
Sure.
operation that keeps it within the finite field of two to the power of of 8. So it was just such a beautiful method, and it's obviously not been cracked since then, and it's stood the test of time. We'll
Sure.
talk a bit about AES a little bit later, but what did the 2000s bring in the group?
Yes. Well, the Ingrid Verboven returns to the university as a full professor in 2003. So she had spent some time in at universities and companies in California, and I was department chairman then, and the the our department had several research units, and there are two research units which were in the realm of what she wanted to do. One was on analog chips and chip design, and the other one was cryptography COSIC group. So she could choose which one of the two she wanted. And of course, she had affinity with both of them, but she finally chose the cryptography group because she felt that her added value, at least that's my interpretation, that her added value in this group of cryptography was more needed and could bring more success than in a group which was already doing a lot on all kinds of algorithms for telecommunication, analog as well as mixed analog digital and so on. And nowadays, this group is also working on chips for AI, but for Ingrid, her role in cryptography group has been very instrumental because the design of algorithms really needs also the chip design, and also the implementation is an important element to influence the design. As it was already the case for AES, chips were an important element in the value of the algorithm.
Hmm, yeah.
Mhm. Um, so she also made a good choice, and she have not the impression that she regrets her choice to have worked in Gothic. Um, yeah. So in the 2010, the group grew really very much, and I must say the number of professors also increased, and so in that sense, there is the growth was really in terms of supervisors, in terms of research activities, and also in going deeper into to more fundamental mathematical elements. So it's there's now I think more than 100 members in COSIC, and so that's already a quite successful evolution. And Bart Pernille is still heading this group. So
Because there was obviously the advancement onto SHA-3 with Kitcha.
gotcha.
Kitcha.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
oh, another difficult one. I think I
very.
read it was intentional that it was quite difficult to be able to pronounce in in English, but I may be wrong with that. But that was obviously
You maybe
again,
maybe you're right. It's some way of teasing the
yeah.
English speaking people.
How would you pronounce that?
Getcha.
Kitcha, kitcha. See, it's really difficult, I think, from an English speaker to kitcha. We keep saying ketchup or something like that. It's really or
Oh,
Kit Kat or
ketchup.
something.
Sure.
So I think it was amusing, and obviously NIST gave it the very boring name of SHA-3. And this was a real movement because obviously the work that had been done before was around the Merkle-Damgard methods, SHA-2 SHA-1, like MD5 were all based around this squeeze with this methods around the primitive, and we found out that it could be broken in some way, especially to do with the padding and so on. And then the wonderful research around that would become STRAT3 was now looking at a sponge function, almost like from the telecoms circuits of the past, that you can have a state and then the data gets inputted in and it will change the state of it. And it was wonderful because you could now have a hashing method and a symmetric key method, because normally they were different. You had MD5 and you had DES, and they were different. You had different chips. But the wonderfulness of SHA-3 is that you could now actually create a chip that was efficient, and it would implement both a hashing method and a symmetric key method. Can you remember much about the time about SHA-3? Because it was up against other really significant hashing methods that were around that were very much using the traditional approaches, but the Kitcha method just wiped the floor again in virtually every one of the areas. Can you remember something
I think you have
about that time?
better memory of that than I have. So somehow, yes. So
Yeah.
you
But
know a
that
lot
was
of details.
yeah, that was obviously a great extension from the
Mm,
AES work, and it showed
mm.
the great foundation overall. And then since that in the 2010s, how has the group advanced since then?
So actually, the in 2013, I had my emeritus retirement time, and by that time, the group was already so large, and the other group, which I was supervising, was more on data science and mathematical modeling and support vector machines and singular value decomposition. These two groups were rather not using the same mathematics and the same methods. And it was kind of natural after my retirement that I was no longer heading the two together. But the two were then split into two separate units within the department. This brought some structural changes, but Bart Preneel was de facto already organizing and leading the cryptography group, and he became the head of this division in the department. And now there's one division more in the department, but it worked out fine, and the two groups have since grown all both of them. So in that sense, they have both. I see that my uh, influence is going into two directions, and the other one is called Stadius because of one of the medieval researchers who was an astronomer working on data, and we wanted to use his Latin name Stadius,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and Kosik kept this name of Kosik. No, and new projects, new ERC projects are being attracted by Ingrid Verboed and others. So it's really a flourishing group with creative ideas, I must say. I
Yeah.
recently went to a session with Ingrid Verboed because she got a major award of the Flemish community uh, this year. With the king was giving this to her, so in that sense, it was a major session in the central hall in Brussels, so with the king presenting these awards, and so she's quite respected for her work and.
Yeah. Because the 18th of November 2025 will go down as a significant day for the university. What happened then?
That's a good question. The AES has been proposed by IEEE um, fellow IEEE community in the Benelux, of which I am a member with the Life Fellows, and they have proposed this as a milestone for recognition by IEEE. IEEE has milestone program, which is very difficult and very selective because they want to have contributions that have been a lasting impact on society over a period of more than 25 years. So something which is more recent than 25 years cannot get this milestone recognition. We presented the two, Vincent Rijm and Johan Damen, for this award with the Rijndael algorithm, and this has been accepted by IEEE, and the procedure is that this is going up into the heritage program of IEEE and finally has to be accepted by the board of directors of IEEE. It was accepted and a plaque was made that should be posted in this location. But then there was a discussion, where could it be placed? And we had a lot of discussions. I was also a bit involved in having a good location for it. And we defended to have it posted on the castle. This was a castle where Carlo Quinto, the Charles V, even had been visiting for during his reign with one of his um, aides that was living in this castle. So this castle is the center for engineering. So the dean has his office over there, and we have been convincing the heritage team of the university that there was a good location at the entrance door, next to the entrance door, to have this plaque pasted. It was accepted, and the vice rector had to sign a document to IEEE that this was an accepted location, and so in that sense, this plaque was opened to the public on this 17th of November. And actually, this was only the second time that a Belgian creation, a Belgian invention, had been accepted as a milestone. So the first one was to Alcatel Nokia in Antwerp for ADSL. So it's quite a recognition, and it was receiving a lot of attention in our local news. And one of the former presidents of IEEE was there to open this. There was a session to introduce the role of AES in society. And actually, with our work, we also try to bring this notion of open research on standards, open standards towards the broader community, because we think that AES and the NIST competition did not bring any financial remuneration for the two authors, but it gives them a lot of recognition. And I think the importance for society is that it's a royalty-free basis, that it can be used worldwide. So it brings communication more openly available. And we think this is a very important element which should not be neglected in the thinking of the researchers nowadays. If you block certain things by having patents and things like that, of course you get some financial value for it, but it's not necessarily the best way. We must say that our university has a very good tradition of patents and also spin-offs, but I also defend that certain open ways of bringing research to the wider community, to society, is a third mechanism. It should not be left or considered to be less valuable.
It's funny you should mention ADSL. I mean, ADSL was such a breakthrough. We went from modems that were 56 kilobits per second if you were very lucky, to something that approached megabits per second. So ADSL played an important element of getting digital signals down these horrible copper
Sure.
cables. You were lucky if they were twisted pair, but they probably weren't even shielded. And the way that ADSL worked was just wonderful, that it could actually sense the potential, and a lot of it goes back to the kind of original work of Shannon, signal
Shannon Kleinrock.
technologies,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so on. But it was amazing how you could actually sense this last, it used to be called the last mile, that you had fiber cables and excellent coaxial cables, and then all of a sudden you hit these horrible cables that had been there for decades. And ADSL opened up the world, and it probably did more for the internet and the web than probably anything else, because at that time we could actually use our existing cabling
On our devices.
network and properly get the speeds there, and we didn't have to dial up anymore with these switched networks. We could use TDM and so on, and that was such a wonderful advancement. So well done to Belgium for enabling that type of technology. And then when you talk about patents, it depends which part of the world that you're from
Sure.
when you pronounce it. But obviously, the Diffie-Hellman method was patented, but I don't think Stanford were quite as aggressive um, in pushing it forward. But the RSA method became a spin-out company
Mhm.
who then would license. They were much more aggressive in license, but RSA did take off because there was probably no other show in town that was there that other companies could use. And then obviously you have the classic example of Klaus Schnorr, who created this amazing paper that for signatures that was much better than the ECDSA method, but it was held back by a patent where the DSA method was open and could be used overall. So you're right, and it's finding that balance. And it's a shame, perhaps, that the inventors of AES didn't make any money. It would have been nice if they'd got some benefit. But I know that they went on tours around the world at the time, and they were quite superstars in computer science overall. So it's probably done their career a lot of good. But I think any inventor needs to understand whether they need to protect it or whether they can open the standard and then obviously
Mhm.
advance quicker. It's a difficult one, especially if you're up against IBMs and Nvidias and Intels who have so many patents that we can go after in any company that they want, and they can even exchange patents
Patent, yes.
to
So we
make
have a
them.
patent strategy
Yeah.
and patent officers who are really looking at yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I
What's-
think it's really important that any researcher talks with their innovation office, the research office, to understand uh, the legal aspects and how they can protect IP. Not that they're trying to aggressively stop people from using methods, but they want to protect themselves against large companies. So it's a very difficult thing, and
Mhm.
obviously in the EU, it can be quite costly to defend a patent through its career. Uh, so, can you outline your work in the Royal Flemish Academy of Belgium, KVAB? I think there was a
Yes.
link to the Royal Society of Edinburgh, which I'm a fellow of. So it was great to see there was some linkage. But what was the kind of things that you did when you were part of the academy?
I was already a long time part of the academy, first in the natural sciences, but when a class of technical sciences was set up in around 2000, I moved into the technical sciences. I was chair of the time technical sciences class, and in 2017, 18, and 18, I became the president of the academy. And as a president, I had, of course, to chair the board of directors and the bureau and the activities. And we also had to renew the the agreement with the government for our financial support. So in that sense, this was a important period. We could renew it for 6 more years, and we engaged in a number of activities. One of these was to set up a reflection group on responsible research and innovation and science ethics, and they asked me to chair this reflection group, and I'm doing that since 2018 until now. And that's an interesting group because we really do nice activities that are related to these topics: public engagement, trust in science, and things like that. The But we also have, with the academy, we have programs for thinkers programs, thinker cycles, where we invite thinkers from abroad to come to our academy and to discuss with several stakeholders certain issues. We had one on reproducibility. Sabrina Leonelli and Lewandowski came for such a program on reproducibility and replicability of research. Now we have recently done one on cognitively strong learners from ages of kindergarten to university. There are good, strong learners who really sometimes miss the opportunities and somehow get disappointed. And that's a really waste for the country. And so somehow we should have programs where they really are detected and supported by different methods of faster progress in the schools, high school and basic school, but also extra incentives and creative elements in there. And this program has put up a whole collection of positive methods. And we had two thinkers, one from the Netherlands, one from Germany, who are really leaders in this field. And so they bring this added value to our community. So that's one of the programs. We have a couple of these thinker cycles per year. We have also a program of internationalization. I also was a member of the unions of academies in Europe on engineering. That's Eurocase, and we have ALEA for all disciplines, and we have members in these boards in these international organizations where we can contribute and bring together our scientists of our academy into programs for scientific advice on topics like climate change, energy transition, and so we have a good international connection. Another element of our international connection is to make agreements with other academies. And one of these, during my term of office as president, was with the Royal Academy of Edinburgh that we made this agreement. So for that occasion, the former president and me as a president and the permanent secretary went to Edinburgh, and we had a very nice reception there. And I still have very good memories of Edinburgh as a nice city and good mutual interactions. To a certain extent, I feel Scotland and Belgium have a very similar attitude, a little bit understatements and not really trying to be overly proud of what they are doing, but bringing really added value. And I still remember this statue that you have in Edinburgh with Newton, Maxwell, and Einstein, with the three of them, and in a synergy, because science makes progress through each of these fantastic inventors, and you of course have Maxwell, and you're very proud of it. So it was a nice visit. And then we had a workshop where the people from Edinburgh, the Royal Academy, came to our academy and have had a session where we were discussing, I think, digital health issues. And so it was a good example of mutual interaction between academies. And
Yeah,
okay,
and you pronounce Edinburgh very well. That's
thank you. I
it's
learned it.
yeah. Many people struggle with Edinburgh is quite
Yes,
typical.
that's wrong.
Edin- Edinburgh is a very European focused city, and you're right. It it doesn't necessarily force its
It's strength
goodness.
to,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
It prizes education uh, so much, and it's important for the city. But you're right. It's coming from a small nation. We're only over 5 million people, but we hope that in terms of innovation, enterprise, we punch above our weights. And I think sometimes a small country can be a bit like that. It can be a bit more uh, agile overall. So I completely agree. Belgium and Scotland, you have obviously have a better football team than we have here, but I don't know how you manage to do that in sport, but you punch above your weight so much. So I think you're obviously an inspiration for smaller nations of the world to do so well. So it's great to see that we have that linkage between Scotland and
Mhm.
Belgium, and I hope we can really continue that and grow that, to really knock down borders that falsely uh,
Sure.
divide us overall.
Like the Brexit, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, well, well, there are many political things, but I think Edinburgh was probably one of the most it was the most pro-leaning city in the UK because it knew that it had to attract people from around the world, and we used to have amazing
Mhm.
European students who would come and study and stay and build companies and so on. So hopefully, hopefully we're over that and we build bridges rather than build walls
Sure.
that we have in the past. So you co-authored a book, and I've got the book here on the invisible
Sure.
power of mathematics, in which outlines a number of stories which are really great to read and great for kids to understand how the importance of maths. Could you just outline one or two of your favorite stories within inside the book?
Well, it was a nice experience with a younger colleague in applied mathematics at our university. We started thinking that we should have good, concrete, very specific examples of the places where they could see that mathematics is used, but it is somewhat hidden for the younger people and also for the mathematics teachers that the mathematics is used there. And in that sense, it tries to reveal this insight and to reveal that mathematics has an invisible role, but a very important role, I must say a crucial role in what these services or these activities are. And they are important in three domains. The first one is house, the local environment. The second one is in industrial applications. And the third one is for the future of human beings in the world. So for these three levels, we wanted to have very concrete examples. So in the first group, one of these is the online payment systems. So, and we always start with the first question, which is somehow a natural question that people have when they do online payments. They sit in front of their computer or their smartphone and they open up a link the first question is, am I talking to the bank or am I talking to cheaters who try to grab some money from me? So you have to reflect on that, and most people don't do it, but it's you need security. You need the HTTPS version when you start. The next question is when you give your orders to transfer 300 euros from this person or from your bank account to this person, is this message indeed correctly received? And can the bank really confirm later on that you have given this order and that you cannot deny it? So there's a set of questions that each of these needs some cryptographic protocols and algorithms for doing the confirmation. And in that chapter, each of these 20 chapters can be read independently. You can really see in words how the mathematics grows and that you see where is mathematics needed. And then we have a separate box to explain a little bit in more detail how the mathematics works. So the students who really hate seeing formulas, they can just continue reading. And we end usually the story with, you think that at this moment, this is the end, and has been solved by those clever guys working in cryptography and data security and so on, and computer scientists. But why should I engage in this? And then we discussed, the book was originally written in a Dutch version in 2017, and the English version is more recent, 2024. It has been updated, but the important element is that at the end you see that Bitcoin and new services that are being needed, like homomorphic encryption, these are all new topics that need new mathematics and creative engineers and data scientists and cryptographers to bring this to reality to the community. So in that sense, the story ends with, it's not the end, but it's a step, because we felt during all of our interaction with younger people, sometimes they feel everything that has to be discovered is already discovered. There's nothing left for us. So we should not engage in that. That's a waste of our time. No, it's just the opposite. There are so many open problems in these fields, and in each of these 20 stories ends with open problems. And we need you for this progress that we want to achieve. And in that sense, the book has been used already for the winners of the finalists of the mathematics Olympiad received a copy of our book in Dutch. So in that sense, it was used as a kind of a recognition. And but also we have been organizing some training sessions for teachers in high school, mathematics teachers, to use the book in their lectures so that they can stimulate. I gave several seminars on this to mathematics teachers, because we brought it also to the education of teachers in universities, that this book is an important element for them to understand where the mathematics is used nowadays. I gave you one example on the online payment systems, but there's another one on, for example, on games. You have games where mathematics is also involved, statistics, and we have an example on self-driving cars. You need mathematics for that, and so it's the windmills, examples of that,
High
reducing
winds
the
and high mills, yeah. High winds on high mills.
yes,
Just
yes.
after that.
So there's quite some. I must say, my younger colleague has a different style for writing text And my style, I wrote 10 of these 20, and he wrote 10. And then the, the book company had a review, and they felt that the styles were too different.
Yeah, it's typical,
My,
yeah.
my style was more a bit older and
Formal, more
more
academic.
formal, academic. And so he rewrote my sections, I must say, because we wanted to be really attractive uh, to the younger people, and so that they keep reading the book.
It's it's a difficult thing. You're taught how to write research papers and be very formal and academic in your
Right.
approach, and you
Yes.
forget talking to a 12-year-old child is a lot different. If you're
Yes.
talking about public key cryptography, you're talking about Bob and Alice, and you're trying to relate it to something they would understand. Like when you explain public key cryptography, you say, I have a box and I have a padlock and I have a key and I can distribute my padlock to anyone. You can lock the box with my padlock and then the only key that can decrypt. And I think we forget as academics that we really need to be better at
To have
articulating.
these visual models. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think your book is really wonderful for outlining, and it's something that a teacher should really read, a mathematics teacher, a science teacher, and even business and every area. You should try and bring in mathematics and beauty of it there. And I think too many people are scared of mathematics and almost wear it like a badge. I'm scared of mathematics and I'm proud
Sure.
of it because I've been stung at school or somewhere along the line. And I always felt as a teacher, it was my role to really relate my topic, elliptic curve cryptography. What does that really do for me, in a way that people can understand the scope of it? And I think you've done a really great work. And I really like the way you've mentioned homomorphic encryption because post-quantum cryptography moves away from these models of that are 50 years old towards the lattice methods typically, and a few other methods, isogenes, uh, and multivariate cryptography, which is my one of my favorite areas. And I think NIST is quite keen to make sure that we're not just building with the one method as we've done in the past, but there are alternatives there. But lattice seems to be top. So really, schools perhaps should be saying that these polynomial things that we're doing in these vectors and matrices are the future for machine learning and also in online security. So I think homomorphic encryption is a great example of how you can use mathematics to really secure, and it's such an open area. Where we are with homomorphic encryption is that the next 5 years could be really exciting,
Mhm.
that we could actually use privacy-aware machine learning to really close some of the loopholes that we have within machine learning there. So I think that's an excellent example, and I highly recommend anyone to be able to go and read the book in there. So, I mean, I think you made a lot of advancements in machine learning and especially around support vector machine SVM. We actually use support vector machines with homomorphic encryption. You'd be glad to know. So we're
I
taking
don't know.
that model and training with SVM because it's so great in things like fraud analysis and finance and so on.
Mhm.
And then we apply homomorphical encrypted data into the SVM engine, and then we get homomorphically encrypted data on the output. We can then decrypt that with a private key. So that work is amazing. So could you quickly explain what SVM is and what the applications are? And can you also outline what the least squares support vector machine classifiers were or are?
Sure. The I was teaching for quite a number of years a course on artificial neural networks because there was some interest. There have been different ways of artificial neural networks. The more recent deep learning is another one. Um, but basically, what artificial neural networks do is they work to minimize an objective function. And this objective function in artificial neural networks typically have to learn patterns, but they have many local minima. And in that sense, if you apply an algorithm for artificial neural networks, you descend and you get stuck in a local minimum. So somehow they have the inconvenient behavior that you might have to restart with many different initial conditions, initial points on your surface to get the global minimum. So in that sense, this is an uncomfortable element, and support vector machines can really resolve that. They have a unique global minimum by making, if you have to separate a cloud of points, of positive points, and a cloud of negative points from each other, the support vector machine finds a linear subspace or a line that is separating with a maximal margin the two sets of points. And in that sense, it is, and if you can compute it efficiently, but there were quadratic algorithms. The standard support vector machine is quadratic, but this the support vector machine, the classical one, is quite time consuming for problems with many different variables and data sets. So our goal was to approximate it, this objective function, which was an objective function that had a flat part and two slopes, that approximated by a parabola, by a quadratic function, which of course doesn't do exactly the same thing, but it approximates it. And if you can compute the approximation efficiently, it turns the problem of the design of the computation of a support vector machine into a quadratic function that have to be optimized, a least squares function. And that can be solved by solving sets of linear equations, which is much more efficient. There's some inconvenience that the coefficients, the support vectors are not the same, but you can do some small approximation which can be done efficiently to really get to the good approximation. And that's the least square support vector machine. I must say, for that topic, our PhD student, Johan Suikens, who is now a professor in our department, he really conceived this approximation. And this method was published in a paper of a few pages and has received enormously number of citations. Why? Because from the start on, we decided this algorithm, we will make it publicly available, of course, and also the software will be publicly available, and examples for using it will also be publicly available. And this, together with this support of software support that was publicly available, and the publication and some examples, people could use it in all disciplines. And that's why it was harvesting quite a lot of citations, and it was having a lot of impact. So in that sense, it was a kind of effort, again, I would say very Belgian effort of doing it in a very modest way, but in a way that is bringing together computational efficiency and the benefits of having a global minimum to this field. So in that sense, you can use this software, and the same is actually true for this the algorithms for higher order singular value decomposition, where you do decomposition of singular value decomposition is for a matrix. For a tensor, where you have not two directions but three or more directions, you can also try to compress it as it is done by the singular value decomposition for a matrix. You can do it also for a tensor. And the higher order singular value decomposition can do this compression of data which is also with software supported very well and also receiving a lot of citations. That's another PhD student, Lieven de Lathouwer, who is doing this and continuing to do this nowadays. So I see that many of my PhD students are beautiful work, and this is I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, it's an amazing method, and it contributed so much, and it fitted in with your open science ambassador role that you have in the university too. And this was really probably before the times that we have GitHubs, and we
Yes, sure.
submit our code to with a research paper. And I hate to see when I see a paper these days and they don't actually have the source code that I can try out myself and actually prove that the method actually works. So well done for really pushing that forward. And you're right, there's probably something in the Belgian psyche that supports that type of attitude to science. So how does chaos control work with least square support vector machines?
The, that's a feedback mechanism that is done with for controlling chaos with support vector machines. It has been applied to examples of a double inverted pendulum. You might know that if you have a pendulum, one pendulum, but another pendulum hanging under it, if this is already a chaotic system. And so this these squares control of chaotic systems is applied to controlling this double inverted pendulum to bring it into the double upright position by swinging over. So it's a nice application of this least squares. Least squares has also many different versions and new, yes.
Yeah, it's good. And this is a difficult question to answer. So obviously Gen AI has happened. We saw the Transformers paper from Google in 2017, and then really the whole industry has massively taken off, and many people worry about the future of our society. So, what do you think the future of AI looks like? You talked about artificial neural networks and so on, because they're the basis of LLMs. Are LLMs the answer to our future? Are we moving towards artificial general intelligence when machines become more intelligent, more creative than we are? Where do you think we are just now, and where are we heading? That's big questions.
Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but my feeling is that the our brains as humans are superior to whatever these things do, and they will be superior for many things. But I'm not saying if you think about memorizing or finding some data or drafting a summary of a text. I think AI can do all of these and there will be improvements. And I don't hate these improvements. I think we should embrace it because universities will have to train their students to work with it to be more productive. But this does not bring me to the point where I consider that our brain that these systems will be so superior that they will give us instructions for what we should do and that we should become slaves of these systems. I think this will not happen, not during my lifetime and not during the lifetime of my grandchildren. That's what I tell also my grandchildren. So it's, and in that sense, I feel there's a lot of journalists and more communicators who really bring messages to really oppose to it. It's more polarized, this discussion, and I don't think it's good. I think it's good to understand what these systems are doing. Of course, you should avoid, and with the Academy in Brussels, we are working. We had a session last week on the avoiding problems of social media and AI for the younger people, and so we should avoid it. Of course, that it is bringing some unwanted impacts, but on the other hand, refuse it and go back to the system where you don't never use these, this is not feasible. Our university has also embraced it in the sense that there's a set of rules that the students should follow in declaring what they use and how they work with it, and also the professors should adapt the way they if they ask to the students to make a summary of a paper, and the students can ask the AI to do it for them, that's not an outcome where they should give value to the student. The student should be able to defend and to explain what really is and what the key things are. So there's need for adapting within the university the way of interrogating and examining the students, not just by text, but also by oral interrogation. It will be different, but I've been interrogating students on linear algebra, 550 students during the summer, during the June session. But they had time to prepare the answer to the questions, and then they came to me and they showed their results, and I could ask them, why do you do this and why do you do that? And you can easily see whether what they have written is something they have understood, or whether they have somewhat memorized it. Memorization of mathematics is useless for me. It's the way you use it and the way you develop your arguments from top to bottom. If you prove a theorem, there's some conditions of the theorem, and at each step you use some of these conditions. And then I ask the students also, where do you use this condition in your theorem proof? And if they didn't know where they used it, somehow this is a lack of understanding. And or otherwise, I would ask during the proof, why can you go from here to here? So it's a kind of deeper understanding. And this is not something I expect that these machines will do it for you. Human beings, human brains should be trained. And I'm so much impressed with what the human brains of the students I supervised, how they developed over the years, that I'm confident that artificial intelligence will not be able to beat it in the next 50 years. What happens beyond that, I will rest my case.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think the LLM isn't really understanding
No.
under the hood. It's basically regurgitating what it's learned from Stack Overflow or from a book or something like that. I mean, it just is like a parrot. It has a nice template. It will feed in probabilistic answers to fill in the blanks and so on. It's not really reasoning that much. You can make it pretend like it's reasoning, but for example, I learned painting-based cryptography, and it's taken me a long time to really understand the magic behind it and how people like Jan Kamenisch was able to come up with these amazing privacy-aware methods. But it was really applying it into examples that I could actually see, and then from these examples, I learned a bit more about painting-based cryptography, and then I looked under the hood at what was happening with the curves and so on, and you really start to see that wonderment. So it's really important, I think, to really do things practically, and I think that's where you're great, in that you apply mathematics practically to real problems, and that's when you actually understand them so much more. So why is mathematics so important in this modern age, do you think?
Well, I think mathematics has so many different elements that are valuable for engineers, data scientists, computer scientists, and in order to bring services that are correct and that are valuable for humanity. I see endless opportunities for that, and I think we should also be aware that there's a lot more mathematics to be developed. I tend to give my students also an example of mathematics, that this can be considered like a tree. You have the basic roots, you have data, or you have a set and certain operations on the set. And as you get more specifications on the data and the operations, you can have a different branch. You have discrete mathematics, continuous mathematics. You have and you have the different branches spread out, and somehow the the tree is producing also fruit. And for mathematicians, they like to extend this tree by bringing new branches, and that's their role. And I like that. But we, as engineers, data scientists, computer scientists, should look at this tree in a way where which branch is important for us. Elliptic curves. Okay. So you see that there are certain branches where the fruits are more obvious and valuable. And somehow, during the PhD work, new PhD students should be able to explore in this tree. Maybe there's a branch in this tree that can be valuable for this or that task, to bring the link between the branch and the society needs, or the services or the activities that are needed on the data. So there's still room for much more creative work, and certain PhD students are very much interested in deep mathematics, and that's what they can do over there. Others are more motivated from applications or implementations, and I think we need all of them in this community. And certainly the number of people that are educated in computer security, cybersecurity, and our university has also a master program now in these topics. We need to deliver these, because I think if you think about the cyber warfare, we need good people that are skilled to really protect us and help us for. So in that sense, I see certain evolutions in the positive side, even though it might be really stressful with many of the evolutions that we have in the international community.
Yeah, so when I interview many of the leading people in this area, they've often got a foot in academia and industry, and some will jump completely into industry. And it's because there's a gap in industry for people to read papers, understand the maths, and to formalize things. And I think they can get lots of engineers and software engineers to do the code, but the bit they're missing is the bit that academia provides, that formalization. If you read a paper like, I'd go back to Jens Groth's paper in 2016. If you read that paper, it's very mathematical. And really, you don't quite know where the main contributions are, but someone broke it up and created the code, and then we're now seeing it applied to so many zero knowledge proof areas. So I think that that link between academia and industry is very strong, and I think industry is missing those skills of the top researchers, the PhD students. If you really want to innovate, make sure that there isn't one little problem in your maths that could rip the whole of the blockchain apart, or the cryptocurrency. I think that that need is there as strong as ever. And then you talk about the methods of the past. So we have post-quantum cryptography and lattice methods that are now applied in cryptography. The Fourier method is still in there. It's now discrete, but wow, Fourier is at the core of many of these methods because it's such efficient method. You now see matrices and vectors being used extensively in machine learning, and you see these GPUs that you get now that are different from the CPUs, horrible architectures, but these GPUs are just optimized for doing these vector matrix operations, inverse matrix, and so on. So I think it's really important to tie to the hardware, and we're now seeing new computing models. You'll see data centers being created, and they're all GPUs. So the days of us having servers and things like that are gone. Now what we need is computational elements, and also the polynomial understanding is at the core of many of these new cryptography methods. I think it's really important that students understand what a polynomial is and how you operate on it because it has inherent homomorphic properties because a polynomial can be represented as a vector in a lattice quite easily. And if we're going to move away from our traditional cryptographic primitives, which are elliptic curve, and we need to move scale these into a new world, then we need these homomorphic operations. So it's such a wonderful area just now, I think, with the advancement of post-quantum cryptography, I think it becomes closer to machine learning too, so that the chips that we're producing and the GPUs are now applicable to post-quantum cryptography and homomorphic encryption. It's a wonderful opportunity, I think. So, my penultimate question and is really if you were to give any advice to technology innovators, I don't know, people who are creating research labs or something like that, what advice would you give them on areas that they should target on?
Maybe coming back to what you mentioned before is, I think, the important element of energy consumption. I think good methods, I'm sure that new mathematical methods have to be designed, or algorithms have to be designed which consume less energy than what is nowadays with the data centers. And somehow there's an explosion of energy consumption, which I think is, yes, it's a waste because uh, if there's a scarceness of scarcity of electrical energy, I think this is not good for society. There's also the heating elements, and so in that sense, the energy consumption, energy elements deeply integrated into the algorithms is an important element that needs bright minds, I think, to get engaged for both for AI and for cryptography. I feel that's so. The yes, I. On the other hand, I think it's important to keep this momentum of the role of mathematics in to get it more better widespread available among younger people. So it's not uniform.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I agree. And every tick of the clock, we forget every click of the clock on our computer is consuming energy. And the
sure.
higher the CPU, the more energy. There's almost like a linear relationship. The faster you run your processor, the more energy it actually consumes. And I think we're just very wasteful with these things. We're now creating nuclear power stations to provide power into data centers in the desert. The desert is probably not the right place to have a data center when you think of all the cooling that you need for it. So I completely agree. And the great thing about SHA-3 and methods like that is that we're quite optimized in terms of energy. And I think we need to start to be thinking more about edge computing. Why do we
Mhm.
send data packets all the way to a
Sure.
data center in the US while we could compute right at somewhere near where we are? So I think edge technology will
Yes,
certainly improve
I
these
also think
things.
so. But there's a lot of research over a range of topics that is needed for that. So, yes.
Yeah.
So
And I
there's room
think,
for a lot of creative minds. One should
yeah.
not be desperate at this moment.
Yeah. And when you look at it, I remember working in microchips, and I dealt with microns. That's a millionth of a
Yes.
millimeter, and I thought that was really small. I didn't do it for a long time, and now I find out that we're down at 4 nanometers, which is just unbelievable when you think that the size of the transistor, through all that research, we've now got it to the point that we can't get any smaller. So obviously, the research community needs to start to be able to look at qubits and quantum as the way to be able to continue the advancement in electronics and the hardware. From the Intel, was it Moore's law? Every 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 year we can, or every 18 months or
Moore's
two
law.
years,
Yes, yes.
we can double the amount of transistors and computing power. And we've kind of hit the limit when it comes to silicon. So I suppose an exciting area now is for us to move into a quantum world. Not every problem can be applied into a quantum computer, but certainly showed that breaking discrete logs and elliptic curves and RSA, the integer factorization, are problems that a quantum computer can solve. So I suppose this quantum horizon is there. It's scary because it breaks a lot of our existing methods. Doesn't break AES, which is great. So well done with that and SHA-3. But certainly that scaling into qubits as opposed to bits brings us into a new world of opportunity. I would think.
I would say that for quantum computing, I have a bit mixed feeling or similar to the AI.
Yeah.
There should be no exaggeration for quantum computing because quantum computing cannot be done in our smartphones because they have to be cooled, and so it's reserved for data centers or for centralized locations, the quantum computing, but it's not something which is which will spread universally, and in that sense the the prospects of it are limited, I feel. But
You're right.
so one should be careful because sometimes journalists exaggerate also with quantum computing.
And and there's a balance between the complexity of the problem, and I think only when the complexity becomes extremely high does a quantum computer actually have a benefit over
Sure.
classical machine learning
Precisely. Yes.
that that you would have. And it's a physics thing. I've always
Sure.
uh, been told that we shouldn't really be thinking like our classical computers. This is a physics experiment that we're running. When we break RSA, we're actually racing waves and so on and measuring things. So it's almost like a physics. And to take the physics experiment into real life will take a
Mhm.
lot of building. And you're right, a lot of the hype just now is it's breaking RSA, but all it does is break 15 into two prime numbers of 3 and 5. That's a quantum leap away from where we are with RSA
Mhm.
just now. So I think there's a lot of hype, and obviously it needs to be uh, grounded with real theory. But I mean, the horizon is there over the next 10 years. They could
Sure.
create
Sure.
them,
Sure.
and certainly the investment that's there. One of the big things is that they will break public key cryptography, which means that TLS and HTTPS get broken for key exchange and
Mhm.
also for our trust in the websites that we're creating. But we've had 50 years of it, so it's done very well for us. So my last question is really, what would you change in your career? If you could change one thing in your career, what would it have been?
Well, I have been reflecting about it, and somehow I feel that the 3 years that I was in Berkeley, this is from 76 to 1976 to 1979, I was then 28 to 31. This was really a very productive period, but somehow I feel I should have spent more time on cryptography while I was there. I was more working on nonlinear circuits and nonlinearity and applied mathematics, and somehow I feel that if I could do it again, I would spend maybe one of these 3 years on cryptography and all kinds of data security and algorithms that turned out to be later more important for me than. But fortunately, with a good student like Ivo de Smet, I was put on the right track for cryptography, and I could do my thing that I enjoyed very much with cryptography.
Great. Yeah, I mean, probably the things I learned from electrical engineering helped me today. I regret a part of my career where I didn't do mathematics. I moved from engineering into computer science, and I was quite surprised that computer science didn't have a great deal of maths in it compared with some of the engineering. So that was my regret for that. But
Mhm.
probably the work that you did then helps your brain to be
Sure,
able
sure,
to
sure, sure. I don't
understand
regret
things.
my time there, but at this is a very nice place with so many exciting things happening that yes, you want to grasp all opportunities and. That's why I think also for the younger generation to spend a postdoc period in the United States, even though it's getting more difficult, can be really rewarding. But maybe they can come to Edinburgh also. That's another opportunity to expose their mind. And
Yeah. Well, it's been a real privilege to speak with you and to reminisce over such an amazing, fantastic career. And when you think of the seeds that you've created for our world, when you think that trillions of transactions per day are using AES methods and protecting our citizens, it's really amazing what you created and what your team and all your PhD students created and how you as a leader has really built this amazing infrastructure in Belgium. So thank you so much for all of your great work and thanks for the chat today. Hopefully we will see you sometime soon in the UK and for us to continue to collaborate. Thank you so much.
it was my pleasure. Thank you.